video, we're going to take a look at the different WRA, or Weapon Release Authorization options at your disposal. Keep in mind, WRA can be set by unit, by mission, or by side. To access these, we can either select the unit and go ahead and select what we have as far as MCON, or I should say doctrine window. Then we can go to the WRA, or if we want to do it by an entire side, we can simply go Control-Shift-F9, go ahead and select exactly which one we need. Of course, we can always go up to Game, press Side Doctrine MCON WRA, and then go ahead and select it from that particular option. Keep in mind, when you do it for sides, you're going to have every single WRA for the entire side. Basically, what this does is it gives you the ability to fine-tune the way weapons are used. For example, if we wanted to take a harm missile, we can see that it has a bunch of different options. The item on the left is simply going to be the item that it's targeting. This is going to be how many weapons are launched in a salvo. This is going to be the number of shooters in a salvo, whether or not the weapon should fire at an automatic distance, or whether the weapon should be used in self-defense. In this case, whenever you're working with a harm missile, it's simply you could define, do we want to make it so it's the missile defense value? Do we want to do 1 round? Or do we want to do something a little more complicated? We can also define it to use all weapons against a target, in which case every missile available on the entire side that is in range will be deployed against that. So for example, I happen to know in this particular scenario that we have a couple older SAM sites. So instead of using the missile defense value, I'm simply going to define that as 1 round. Now, once we define how many weapons we want in a salvo, we can then decide how many shooters is in the salvo. Now, where this gets interesting is I can go ahead and do something like this, where I'll fire enough weapons to fill the quantity requirement, in this case 1 round, or I could go ahead and do something like this, in which case each time a radar is detected and intact, 2 different shooters will each fire 1 round. Now, if I wanted to go ahead and say 2 rounds, and now you're only going to get 2 rounds again. Now, if I switch this one over here like this, we're going to get multiple shooters or a single shooter until there's a total of 2 missiles approaching the particular target. I'm going to go ahead and reset this one back to 1 round. Automatic firing range simply says what range should this weapon be deployed automatically. Now, if I order this one to just do a regular automatic attack, the aircraft or whatever shooting unit will move within this distance before firing. Keep in mind, I can come down here and say I only want it to be within 30 nautical miles, in which case this unit will not fire automatically until it gets to that distance, and then it will go ahead and engage it. Our final option in the end gives us the ability to use this weapon in self-defense. In this case, if we want to, we can go ahead and have it fired at 2 nautical miles. We can even have it fire at maximum range in the event that this particular unit is lit up by some kind of radar. Now, there are different types of options depending on the type of weapon as well. Now, for example, if I were to scroll down to my AIM 9X Sidewinder, I notice there are multiple different types of target options I have. Now, first thing we can have is at the top is going to be unknown targets. In this case, if we have an unknown air target, we're just going to use 1 round. But let's say we want to go ahead and customize this a little bit. For example, a 5th generation fighter, instead of using exactly 1 round, we actually want to fire 2 rounds at this particular. And let's say if we have a 4th generation, we'll also fire 2. After we do that, we need to make sure that the shooters per salvo make sense. In this case, if we want just that unit taking that shot, we can go ahead and set it to 1 unit. Or if we want it to be a little more strategic, we could actually make it so multiple units can contribute to the total number of shots fired at that particular unit. Coming down here, let's say we also don't want to use this particular weapon on any sort of helicopters. We can come down here and say, do not use this weapon against this target type. We can also change the automatic firing range or the self-defense. Now, the nice thing about this is we could go ahead and say, let's say we want to use 1 round against a helicopter. We also want to go ahead and say no automatic fire. However, if for some reason it gets within a self-defense situation, we can use that as a self-defense option. Now, where this starts to get a little more complicated is when you start using different types of weapons that have a little bit more reach or multiple target types. For example, our tactical tomahawks. We can now define the different sorts of attack by individual unit. Notice, this is going to be an automatic fire depending on how it is set up. But in order for tomahawks to be fired automatically, it has to be programmed to engage opportunity targets. Otherwise, it will not do so. In this case, let's say we want to launch 1 type of missile for each one of these different items. All right, we've gone through each one of these items and defined them to fire 1 round. So now if I were to go to my group here and go ahead and say, go ahead and begin firing at opportunity, we'll go ahead and doctrine. Let's say, go ahead and engage opportunity targets. Now what's going to occur is this particular battle group is now going to launch a massive salvo of Tomahawk cruise missiles, but it's only going to launch enough of them so that each one of those particular ones is only going to strike targets as we defined in our WRA. Keep in mind, like I was saying, each one of these units for WRA can be defined individually. For example, if I had my Zoom Walt Destroyer up here and I wanted to define this one so it does not use its railgun, I could simply go up to the Doctrine window, go to WRA, go to that particular weapon, and simply say do not use for any other strike for that particular purpose. Again, that's going to give you a pretty useful option. So in this case, I'm going to say don't use it at all. Or if you prefer, you can leave weapons per salvo alone and simply disable automatic fire. In this case, no automatic fire, going all the way down here. And now the weapon will not be used for that purpose. Keep in mind, because of the nature of this particular weapon, there's a tremendous amount of different target options that you have at your disposal for engagements, but none of them will be fired in an automatic sort of a fashion. So now we'll go ahead and watch the conclusion of our little excitement here. And now, as you can see, only one tomahawk per different target came into engagement range and completed the engagement.